Hi-ho, Kermit the Frog. You're listening to the Power Movement.
Welcome to another episode of the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and this week we are heading back to the snow with ski slopestyle Olympic gold medalist Joss Christensen. And with the Olympics right around the corner, it is the perfect time to talk to Joss. To be honest, I thought this interview could turn out a little bit dry. I don't know Joss too well, but from what I do know, he's a quiet guy, and I thought that would translate to the interview, and I was totally wrong. He has a refreshing perspective on things, and he's got a gold medal. Over the next 4 weeks, Joss has a chance to make the Olympic team again, but he's coming off a horrific knee injury. And before we talk about his injury, recovery, and his whole career, I need to ask you to follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement and reach out to me with any feedback or concerns. My email is mike@thepowellmovement.com. If you think I'm a douchebag, it's not necessary to email me and let me know, but if you have to do that, I understand. I am not going to hold that against you. Finally, I need to thank my sponsors. They are Evo.com, Rescue Water, 10 Barrel Brewery, The Summit at Snoqualmie, and Unofficial Networks. Please support them and use the discount codes that are in the ads so they'll keep sponsoring me. Now, let's talk to Joss. How's life treating you these days?
Pretty good. Just started skiing last week for the first time in almost 7 months, which has been awesome. So definitely can't complain. Just wish we had more snow out here. It's pretty wild. I just went for a walk in my t-shirt.
I see it's hurting really bad in Utah. Everybody's posting photos of them biking.
Totally. Yeah, I think a bunch of my friends are in Salt Lake right now biking, but you could definitely bike up here in Park City.
That is pretty crazy for this time of year. And like you said, your first time getting on snow in a long time was last week. How does the knee feel?
Yeah, it feels great. Luckily, this is my first time tearing my ACL, but in my other knee, I've dealt with a lot of cartilage problems and just, I don't know, wear and tear problems. And it's always been hard getting back to snow after taking a bunch of time off or after having some scopes in my other knee. I've always struggled really the first month or so, but I've skied 4 days now and my knee feels amazing. So I'm really excited. I'm really happy. I spent a lot of time rehabbing, and this whole last week proved to me that it was worth all those hours in the gym when I really wanted to give up and just sit at home and watch videos on my computer.
I guess we should talk about the injury so people know what you're going through right now. So this happened, it was May 10th. You tore your ACL, your meniscus, and MCL sprain. You're at Super Park 21, and there was a channel gap, and something happened with your landing. How did it all play out?
Yeah, I mean, it was honestly one of the best days that I've had on skis in a long time. I struggled last winter. We were traveling to so many competitions. I wasn't really in the right headspace, wasn't skiing too well, wasn't getting the results I wanted. And we went to Mammoth. It was my third day of the trip. And yeah, I got there for Super Park, was having such a good day. Learned a couple new tricks. We were at the end of a long day. I think it was about 5:30 when I crashed. It was just pretty unfortunate. I just learned like a single cork right 1260, which I've wanted to do for a while. And I landed one, I landed a pretty good one. I put that in my Super Park edit. I just, of course, wanted to go for one more and see if I could do a little better, and just landed a little nose heavy switch. And unfortunately, the heel piece of my left ski just exploded off my ski. So when I went to stop my momentum with my left foot, there was nothing there but snow on my ski boot. So my foot dug straight into the slush, which ended up twisting my whole body over my right knee. And I knew instantly. I mean, I watched my foot almost go 180 degrees the wrong way and felt a huge pop in my knee. I got up and skied off the run. I mean, I knew I just tore my ACL, but it was kind of funny. I skied probably a couple hundred feet on that leg just to see if it still felt fine. It definitely didn't feel fine, but it sucked. Yeah, I mean, everyone around me, I feel like, has torn their ACL. So, I never felt it before, but I knew the second I felt a little explosion or pop in my knee that was it.
Yep, I've done that as well. And the connection between the top and bottom of your leg is just, it's not there. I mean, if you were to go swimming with a knee like that, the bottom of your leg, it feels like it might flutter.
Totally.
So that happens, obviously ruins your day. And it's coming into the biggest year of your life compared to the last Olympics. And you have surgery a week later. It's May 18th that you have the surgery. It's got to be frustrating when you blow your knee like that And it really is an equipment malfunction because you said your binding blew up. It's like you might have stomped that trick had your binding not exploded. Are you sponsored by a binding company?
Yeah, I'm sponsored by Tyrolia. And the weird thing about it is I've thought about it a lot at this point. I've been mounting a lot of my skis lately. Fortunate enough for me, I didn't mount that pair, so I don't feel like it was my fault. Yeah, after a whole summer of thinking about it, what I came to realize is that I probably leave my skis covered in water in the back of my truck, not in the garage, not dried off too often. And I believe that just that spring, I kept leaving my skis in the back of my truck with a lot of moisture in there. So my opinion is I think over time, there's a lot of moisture in the core of my ski, and that was just what happened. And I just got unlucky because I landed that same way, I think 3 times, if I look through my footage before that crash, where I landed a little nose heavy and just washed out. So who knows? I mean, haven't had problems with bindings ripping out of my ski before. It was such a bummer because it's an equipment malfunction that shouldn't happen. But at the same time, I'm a lot more careful with, like this whole last week, the 4 days I have skied, I made sure to bring my skis inside and dried all the water off my bindings. And I think I'll probably be pretty anal about that for the next couple of years.
That's got to be frustrating, but I guess over the course of your life, it is part of the game, the torque that you're putting into skis, especially if you don't land perfect and you put extra torque on that binding eventually, yeah, something's going to happen. If it's the 3rd time you did it that day, who knows how many times you've done it on that ski where those screws are pulling and eventually they pull out. So it's not really a binding exploding by any means. It's just the binding mat in the ski couldn't hold the screws once you got to that point.
Totally. Maybe my cores were too soft, too soiled, who knows. It sucked. That's all I can say.
There's nothing worse than soiled cores, I will tell you that. I do it quite often, and it is terrible. You have surgery 8 days later. Big surgery for you. Every skier seems to have it, or a lot of skiers have this surgery. And usually you're able to come back pretty quick. I wasn't able to by any means. I had a terrible infection. But it sounds like you had a ton of swelling right out of the gate and had to have another surgery. And that has to be frustrating for an athlete of your stature.
Totally. I mean, I probably should have waited a little longer after my crash to get my ACL repaired and my meniscus stitched up. But
do you make that call, though, or does a doctor? Because I don't think you're trained to make that decision.
It was a little bit of both. I think a regular doctor, or if I wasn't in a situation that I'm in, trying to rush back, I believe this US ski team doctor, Andrew Cooper, would have suggested maybe waiting till the swelling went down, especially since my meniscus was almost torn completely in half and flipped upside down on itself. But at that point, I mean, I was counting months the second I crashed, seeing if it was even possible for me to get back to skis in time to try and qualify for the US team this year. So yeah, I went into surgery with a pretty swollen knee, so I think that wasn't the smartest decision. But the hardest part for me was I had a lot of people telling me to see different surgeons, or a lot of people criticizing my decisions on when and where I was going to get my ACL fixed, which, I mean, at this point, I feel like there's so many good doctors out there. You really never know what's going to happen. Dr. Cooper, who I've had 4 surgeries with already, I know him pretty well. I trust him. So for me, I put a lot of trust and faith into his skills and the fact that he's been inside my other knee a few times. And it just sucked because I had surgery. Everything seemed to go well. I did therapy 2 days after surgery and everything was amazing. One of our therapists was telling me that she's never seen a knee so happy looking and not red, not swollen, not hot. And at that point, I thought I got away with murder. I'm like, oh my God, I just had all this trauma done to my knee. And in less than a week, it's excited. And I think I'm going to rehab pretty quick and get back to snow. But I might have jinxed myself because the next day I went to the COE here in Park City to get therapy. And I was in excruciating pain. My knee started swelling up. I just looked like I had a soccer ball in my quad, just right above my kneecap. The pain was so bad. It's so hard to describe how the pain, I mean, I'm sure you've experienced nerve pain before.
Yeah.
It's like a crazy burn that just travels around your whole leg. And that was what was the hardest part for me. I didn't know what hurt, but I knew we needed to relieve pressure in my knee. So I got my knee drained. I think 4 days after surgery, they took about 130 milliliters of blood, and it was like thick, dark blood. So we knew something was bleeding.
Oh.
Then life was good. I was like, maybe that was it.
Did that relieve that pain for you?
Instantly. But the worst part about it was it came back within a couple hours. I had my knee drained. 5 times before we decided to go in and scope it and figure out what was going on. So I had about a week there where I was honestly like wanted to cut my leg off. I've never been in so much pain in my life. I was screaming, yelling. Luckily, my mom was around to help me out, but pain meds didn't help. Nothing helped at all. So we decided to go back in and check it out. I'm still not sure what was wrong with my leg, what was going on, or what the doctor did when he went in the second time. But we put a bunch of medicine in there from what I'm aware of, and I had a drain bag sticking out of my knee. So I had a long tube that was constantly pulling the blood out of my knee for the next week and a half. And it was crazy. I mean, it looked like nasty ass fruit punch just draining out of my knee. Was lucky enough that was it, that it wasn't that my ACL was getting rejected or that my meniscus wasn't healing. It was something inside my knee just didn't want to stop bleeding. So that was luckily over, but it ended up turning out to be an even longer problem and bigger problem than I thought, because I had a lot of issues with scar tissue and the range of motion in my knee. We spent about 3 months every day just trying to bend my knee, stretch my knee, get my knee past 90 degrees, and it just wouldn't go. And I'm sure with your knee, you probably experience the pain you get when you're breaking up scar tissue or when you're trying to stretch through scar tissue.
I watched the video of you online. It almost had me in tears watching it because it brought me back to those days. The video of you breaking that scar tissue, I mean, they put you on drugs to do that, right?
Oh, hell yeah. I mean, yeah.
That process of taking that knee and trying to push it together when it doesn't want to go at all is gnarly. And I'll put the video in the show notes because to get your leg to work, that was a huge process. And the pain there had to be almost as bad as the burning you were feeling.
Oh, totally. I mean, we would crank on my leg every day. I mean, I would spend hours trying to stretch at home. It was so bad I couldn't even get my leg around on a spin bike. It was really kind of slowing my rehab down. And honestly, I think my therapists and doctors, no one was really telling me what their thoughts were. But I know everyone was a little nervous that I wasn't going to be able to be good enough to get back to skiing when we planned it, to stay on track for our goal. But I decided to just bite the bullet and get that manipulation, is what it's called, which can be scary because they could re-tear my meniscus when they do that.
Okay.
And that was kind of the risk I had to take. It was either wait another couple months and see if we can break through the scar tissue, or chance tearing my meniscus. But having Dr. Cooper knock me out and break through it. And luckily I went with that decision, which was hard because some people wanted me to do it and a few therapists thought I shouldn't do it. But in the end of the day, it was one of the best decisions I've made all summer, was to just bite the bullet and undergo that procedure, because we caught up pretty quick. And I honestly think no one thought that 2 months ago I'd be skiing this week. So super excited that it all worked out for me. It seemed like I just kept getting hit with all these little problems left and right, and definitely lost sight of my goal. And I mean, at that point, even like 2 months ago, skiing was so far away and was such a stretch to the thought of even getting back on skis that I really lost a lot of motivation, which sucked. But I'm just so lucky it all worked out for me, and knock on wood, nothing else happens. But yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, some people have their ACL repaired and they have zero problems and they're skiing in 6 months, but then some people had to deal with issues like I do, or some people's ACLs just don't heal. So it's a luck of the draw, really, I feel like.
And those doctors, they have to think, I mean, they were handed a Ferrari that had a blown engine and they had to fix the engine and get it back on the race course. And that should be easy for the mechanic, aka the doctor, as that's what they do. And you don't want the most prized Ferrari in the world who's going to regain its Indy 500 or wherever Ferrari's race title. You don't want to screw that up. And on that doctor's resume, it's, you know, if anybody asks how he did with the Olympic gold medalist, well, it wasn't so good. But if you go ahead and win a gold medal again, everything's gone. It's like, well, you know, I fixed his knee and he won a medal again, so whatever. But we will see, because the games are going to come pretty soon and we'll talk about that. But before, I want to talk about really your whole life. And before we even get into your life, because it's a long intro story, I'm going to talk about my sponsors first.
Cool.
And the first one is Evo, or evo.com. Saying the .com makes them sound like a website, and they are. They're one of the best websites out there. But they are also one of the best retail experiences in the entire U.S., and you can find them in Seattle, Denver, and Portland. They carry the best brands in store and online, and they hire the most knowledgeable and approachable staff who live the sports. And they focus their time on building community and giving back to charity. Evo.com offers free shipping on orders $50 or more and a no-hassle return policy. And for listening to the Powell Movement, they're going to give you 10% off your entire order. When you check out online, enter the code capital TPM, the number 10 at checkout, and you'll get 10% off your entire order. Thanks to Evo. Now I'll jump into my next sponsor. They are Rescue Water. And if you live an active lifestyle, you're blowing it if you haven't tried a Rescue Water. If you work out, ski, bike, snowboard, or like team sports and you need to hydrate, there's no sports drink that works this good. There's a reason that people drink energy drinks instead of soda when they want to pick me up. It's because they work. It's a similar premise with hydration. If you really need to hydrate, skip the sports drink and grab a Rescue Water next time you're at the store, and you can thank me later. I drink one after a big night to wake up hangover free. It's science and it works. Make Rescue Water part of your routine by heading over to rescuewater.com and you'll save 20% on a 12-pack case when you use the code RESQWATERTPM. All one word, Rescue Water TPM. So those are my sponsors, and now we can get back into your life. And really for you, you were born into a family of ski bums, right?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, my parents, from the story I'm aware of, both visited Park City in the 70s. My dad was on break from university, and same with my mom, and they both ended up loving skiing so much. Park City was a small mining town back then. There was no man-made snow, of course, so they had to wait some years till January to ski, but they both decided to leave school behind, move to Park City, and just work in restaurants and live the ski bum lifestyle. I think they met about 5 years after moving to Park City, and yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what their story, and they got me on skis as early as possible, so I couldn't have been luckier to have such awesome parents who just loved skiing as much as they did.
Were they your stereotypical ski bums, maybe a little hippie element to them, a little party element to them, and not really wanting to worry about the real world, just wanting to enjoy the lifestyle and experience of skiing?
Oh, totally. I mean, my mom went to Woodstock. She still has the tickets from there, and they definitely had a lot of good times. I haven't heard all the stories yet. I feel like I'm finally at the age where my mom will kind of let me know a bit more of how their lives really were. But yeah, I mean, my mom worked in restaurants and my dad started a house painting company pretty much so that they could live here and ski as much as possible. So skiing to them was just a way of life, and it passed through their genetics into me.
Well, if they haven't told you their stories yet, I'm going to guess that they look at you and how you've lived your life and your career, and it seems pretty clean living, in the grand scheme of things. From what I see, a kind of quiet from the onset, all-American kid that doesn't have any of those dirtbag ski bum qualities to him. And maybe they were just trying to shield you from what they really were. Or they look at you like, God, I thought our son would party a little bit more, but whatever.
You never know. There's a lot that happens behind the scenes.
Okay. So you grew up in Park City, right?
Yep. I haven't moved away. The furthest I've moved from my parents' house was probably about 2 miles.
And you just bought a house.
Yep. A little bit outside of town, but still considered Park City. And I'm here. I'm here for good.
And are you Mormon? Because there's a lot of Mormons from that area.
I am not. I had a few friends who are, and we stopped hanging out probably halfway through high school. Just different lifestyle choices.
Fair enough. And growing up, you had an older brother?
Yep. 4-year older brother he was the reason I got into like slopestyle free skiing, really. I loved skiing, but he hung out with Stephen Thomas, Max Peters, Tosh Peters, Austin O'Malley, that earlier crew of Park City Shredders. And I'd say my brother allowing me to follow him and his friends around is what really sparked my love for slopestyle skiing.
I guess you get into skiing early because your parents are ski bums, and I'm going to guess they put you on skis when you're probably 2 and are like, hey, totally. You're going to love this.
Yeah, exactly.
It eventually becomes a babysitter where they can drop you off at a program and have their time to ski.
So that's how I saw it. I saw ski lessons were a reason for my parents to drop us off and allow themselves to go get the POW.
As it should be. I mean, they put a lot of time and money into you, and they also want to get away from you at times, even though you might not want to believe it when you're 8 years old. At one point, you tried snowboarding, too. Was there a period where you were snowboarding?
Yeah, I mean, I liked the boots a lot more, especially when I was 11, 12 years old, but I couldn't do it. I don't know. I had a lot of trouble at Park City getting around from one lift to the other. I couldn't deal with cat tracks. I just hated not having ski poles. So I tried it out for about a year just because that was what everyone else seemed to want to do, and then just floated right back to skiing. All my friends in high school were snowboarders, so I have a huge respect for snowboarding. I still follow snowboarding really closely and watch all the videos, all the edits. Unfortunately, I don't ride with my snowboard friends as much as I used to, which kind of sucks, but we're just all doing different stuff now, living different lives.
What were your Grom days like? I mean, were you one of those kids that was on New Schoolers all the time at every premiere trying to get autographs?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I found New Schoolers for the first time because my brother left it up on the desktop, the home computer.
I found some sites like that for my dad that I shouldn't mention.
And luckily his login was saved. So I was able to log in and I started commenting through his account on all the forums, and he got really mad at me, but that opened a whole new can of worms for me. I love skiing, but I didn't really know the scene too well. I was on New Schoolers every day. I remember I used to check all the ski websites as well. I'd go like Forefront, Armada, go to all the websites every day just to see if they put up new pictures or new product. I made my mom take me and my friends to the ski movie premieres in Salt Lake or whenever they were happening, and I was obsessed. I mean, growing up, Tanner Hall was like my favorite skier ever. Of course, Yoon, Pep, everybody, but getting to watch those guys ski Park City was like a dream come true. And it's really wild as I look back on it. I thought the ski world and the ski industry was so big back then, that the sport was so huge, but it was really just in its infant years. But to me, that was all that mattered.
And so you had some super high level athletes at your mountain, and are you chasing them around like the little Grom, trying to find them and following them all over the hill?
Yeah, I mean, there's one instance in particular I remember. I think it was just Tanner was shooting at Park City. I'm not sure what movie they were shooting for, but they built this weird kind of hip step down jump right next to the half pipe. That whole part of the resort was closed, but my friend and myself hiked up through the woods in the trees and sat there and watched as Tanner was having a solo session on this jump. I was just in awe. I remember he did a switch 7 double Japan, and I was just mind blown by how much style and how smooth it was. And yeah, I couldn't have been lucky enough to be able to watch all those guys. I guess I didn't realize a lot of kids would probably kill to be able to hike through the woods to watch Tanner hit a jump.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds kind of creepy that you're hiding in the woods watching them, but, whatever.
Totally.
Is there anything that you're doing other than skiing that's a passion in your life as well?
Mountain biking. My parents tried to get me into basketball and soccer growing up, but I'm not a selfish athlete, I guess. I couldn't really connect to my teammates. And I also just hated the ball hogs in like ball sports. And for me, skiing and mountain biking were my two obsessions. I mean, it was me and the ground under me. I had full control. It wasn't like, I hope this kid passes me the ball, or this kid's going to get mad at me if I don't pass him the ball, but who knows? I just couldn't understand team sports. So I played a lot of video games as well, but pretty much my whole life was obsessing over skiing. And when I couldn't ski, I was mountain biking.
And you went to a school called the Winter Sports School, and that sounds like a private school. Is it a private school?
So it's a charter school now, but when I went, it was a private school. So it's come a long way.
And you have ski bum parents, and being ski bums, that means they're not pulling in 6 figures, I wouldn't think, unless the painting business is incredible.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, how do your parents make this happen? Because, I mean, I'm sure they're paying for your brother to ski too. He might go to the school as well. And going to a private school is a pretty expensive thing. Do you guys have to sacrifice a lot to be able to do what you're doing?
Yeah, my parents didn't really believe in slopestyle skiing or they didn't really see it as a actual sport or a career path when my brother was skiing more. So I'm happy that my brother found his passion a little later on in computers, but they actually denied him going to the US Open and when they had the X Games qualifier back in the day. So he lived a normal Park City high school life, but I was lucky enough to, with the help of Kerry Miller, I'm sure you've met him or heard of him.
I've heard of Kerry Miller, and it's a very interesting thing.
Yes.
I don't know him. I've met him once or twice. I'd say he's an older gentleman, probably in his 50s, 60s?
He would never tell. I have no idea how old he is, but I think he's in his mid-60s.
Okay. And he has made it a practice over the years of finding young talent and developing them into champions. I mean, he's done it with you, I think Gepper. There's a ton of people. But To me, from the outside, it just looks a little I don't even know how
For
it looks,
sure.
and I don't even want to say anything because it might not be right
Yeah.
for me to. But I think you can get to what I'm alluding to. And I mean, what's that relationship from your younger days? When do you meet him, and what's that like?
Yeah, so I grew up looking up to McCrae Williams, Ashley Battersby, her brother Adam, her brother Tyler, the Peters brothers, Stephen Thomas, a lot of really good skiers. And I wanted to hang out with them and ski with them. And they all had this connection to Kerry Miller. It seemed that he was the guy who could get you into the events you wanted to get into. He was the guy who knew all the sponsors, knew all the team managers, and was really into the sport. And he helped Tanner Hall. He helped a lot of the big dogs when they were still skiing moguls. So to me, it was kind of like, how do I convince my parents to let me travel with this guy who none of us really know? And lucky enough for me, all the other kids in Park City, their parents allowed Kerry to take us to Colorado for the next Snow Surge events and US Open back in the day when it was in Vail. So I'd say a lot of us really owe a big part of our career to, or a big reason why we're here, to Kerry Miller. I wasn't with his program for too long. I'd say I separated when I was about 16, 17 from his group, I guess he would call it. When I was 16, I started traveling on my own, and I was able to figure out the industry myself, which was great. And we've had a lot of ups and downs since then. I don't see him around too much, but at the time, getting back to what we were originally talking to, so he was a great guy, at least for helping me get into the sport. And he was on the board of directors at the Winter Sports School in Park City. So he was able to get me into that school, and they were able to set us up with, what do you call it, financial aid. So my parents would submit their salary to the school, and they'd base how much we pay off that. And luckily enough, for it being a private school, we really didn't pay too much. And I owe that school a lot for helping me out through my high school career. And it was kind of funny because we went to school in 3 double-wide trailers with teachers who didn't have teaching degrees because it was a private school, so they could really hire whoever they wanted. I still feel I got a great education, but I was able to focus on high school all summer long and ski all winter, which was a huge part of getting me to where I'm at today. And back then there wasn't really summer skiing, so I wasn't really missing much. But nowadays they're skiing 24/7, 365. So it's a lot harder.
The sport's changed.
Totally.
You guys are full-on athletes now. It was a lot looser back then. I think I have this conversation with everybody, but it gets to a point where when this thing gets to be an Olympic sport, you have to take it a little bit more seriously. I mean, there's the rigorous drug tests, which might not affect you, but probably affect some people, and just your lifestyle choices. Hey, I can't do this anymore. And it's about being a serious athlete and being in shape and working out every day. And when you're in high school, you're just thinking about skiing every day and getting better through practicing tricks. But when you get to be on another level, you got to get your body in a certain condition too.
The craziest thing, when I look at all the young kids here in Park City now, there's such a big pool of talented skiers in Park City. It's getting bigger and bigger every year. And when I was growing up, there's a group of like 7 of us who skied in the park, and that was it. I sometimes feel bad for the younger generation because I didn't have Instagram. There really wasn't any social media when I was growing up. I had like a Nokia phones that you could play Snake on, and that was it. There was no color. You could make ringtones, I think was the coolest thing you could do. But for me, it was ski as much as you can, hopefully film and put out a season edit every year and try and get known to the point where you could get recognized by the big film companies and make it into films. It's a whole different ball game now, and I'm really happy I grew up in the era that I did. It's just a lot different now, for sure. So it's pretty crazy. I think I would still be a skier if I was 12 years old in Park City right now, but my love for skiing was so different back then than it is now, and my appreciation. I mean, I still love it, but it's all different now.
It becomes a business at some point too to you, I would think.
That is the hardest part, is sometimes like when contracts are up, you hate to think about it, but you got to do well. And I set myself up with a bunch of loans that I need to pay off. And if I don't ski well, then I might not keep my sponsors and might have to go back to school and try and figure out another way of earning, which sucks, but that's how life is, I guess, when you're 25 years old.
You're an Olympic gold medalist. All you need to do right now is go out and get arrested, and then
right?
Go ahead and do the speaking tour after you get arrested, how you turned your life around. You can get paid every time you speak. So, if it ever comes to you thinking to go back to school, give me a call. We'll get you arrested for something that's cool, that'll still give you some street cred. Yeah, then you can make money from there.
I mean, I was thinking of the dick pic in 2014 after the Olympics when I was trying to keep up with Nick's dating contest and Gus's puppies. I was like, how do I separate myself here? Maybe I accidentally posted the dick pic to Twitter.
You can only do that if you're like hung like a horse. If not, you don't want to do that. So we don't need to get into that subject.
I know. Cool.
You really get known, I would say, the 2011 Dew Tour is where you make a name for yourself. It was one of those where I think there was like a round of qualifiers that all the top pros weren't in, that you might have had to been in to qualify to get in the prelims.
Totally.
But you end up getting second at that contest, and that opens doors for you.
Totally. I mean, that was back when I was really struggling with slopestyle. I skied half pipe and slopestyle. I mean, I feel like everybody used to ski pipe and slope back in the day. It was just kind of what you did, and that's what we grew up watching all the skiers do.
And you focused a lot on pipe, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was mainly just because I could get into Dew Tour for half pipe. And like, there was less people skiing half pipe, so it was a little easier for me to fit myself into that 30-person tour. I would travel from stop to stop, pretty much getting the bottom 5 in half pipe, which I think I had to beat 5 people is what my goal was, because then I would get $500 and I'd get invited to the next stop.
Okay.
That was kind of my goal until I could get to the next open qualifier for slopestyle, which is usually at the Breck Dew Tour. But cool enough was in 2011, they added a last chance qualifier to the snow basin stop. And I got into that last chance qualifier where I think it was another 20 kids, and only the kid who placed first would move into the prelims. So lucky enough for me, between pipe practice, I was able to win that last chance qualifier, got into prelims, and that was the first time I was in a Dew Tour contest for slopestyle that wasn't an open qualifier. And it was a dream come true at that point. I ended up winning the prelims, and at that point I was like, holy shit, I'm going to win the Dew Tour. Like, I have a good chance. I just won the last 2 rounds. I already beat these guys. There's only 3 kids who I haven't competed against who are already in finals. I have a great chance. Ended up getting second there, which was a dream come true, behind childhood friend Slopey. And that was kind of what sparked my slopestyle career. I got my first X Games invite that year and kind of worked my way into the tour. And I'd say if it wasn't for that last chance qualifier, who knows where I'd be right now.
So I'm going to jump into one more set of sponsors right here. And the first sponsor you could call a dream sponsor. Actually, all my sponsors are dream sponsors that really help me live. But this one is really important. It's the 10 Barrel Brewery. They brew beer, they drink beer, and they have fun doing it. They're located in Bend, Oregon, and they get after it on powder days and maximize the sun in the summer by making sure they're drinking outside. They support a lot of things in the snow space, and none more important than protect our winters. Right now, they are donating 1% of sales of the current seasonal Pray for Snow Ale and 1% of sales of their trail beer to Jeremy Jones's Protect Our Winters Foundation. My takeaway on this? The more you drink, the more they donate. So head on to your local retailer, grab yourself some 10 Barrel, or get the full 10 Barrel experience by checking out one of their pubs in Bend, Portland, Boise, Denver, and San Diego. There's also a lot more information to be found out online at 10barrel.com. My final sponsor is a new one to the show, but definitely not a new one to me. They are the Summit at Snoqualmie, and they have been my go-to ski destination in Washington since I've lived here. Why? Because they give me a pass. But even if the other resorts in Washington had given me a pass, I'd still come to the Summit. It's 45 minutes away from Seattle, which makes powder weekday mornings a reality, and that's not all. They have amazing terrain for every ability level. Hardcore skiers gravitate towards Alpental, my kid gets his lessons at Central, and for non-skiers, they have tubing, and it is awesome. Smart skiers and riders know that if you buy a pass at the Summit, you'll ski just as hard and you'll spend a lot less time in your car. Head on over to summitatsnoqualmie.com, look at the season pass options, and when you pick the right pass for you, enter the code POWEL18 and we're going to give you pre-season pricing for your season pass. Those are my sponsors. They support me. Please support them. And now let's get back to Joss, and we're talking about making a name for himself in 2011 at the Dew Tour. He places second there. And at this point, are you skiing for line?
Yes, I believe that was my 3rd year skiing for line. Josh Malchek, who's still a team manager now, was always such a good guy to me, and they backed my skiing completely, even when I was not really doing much. I loved my days with Line Skis, and this just such a good way to start a ski career working with that company.
Yeah, it's kind of like an internship in skiing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, exactly.
You get with a cool brand, you get a few pairs of skis and some boots and no money, and that's kind of how that program works.
Yeah, the best part about Line for me was the opportunities they allowed me to have. I mean, I was just getting product from them, which at the time was amazing. I mean, every young kid who wants to be a pro skier would kill for free skis. And I was getting next year's skis, new graphics, and that was just huge.
And Line's a cool brand to be on.
Totally. And they just focused a lot on content. And for me, I felt like that was a huge way to help get my name out there. Whether or not I was going to stay with Line my whole career or not, I loved the crew. I loved skiing with LJ, with Will, with Andy. Chris Laker, who's a good friend of mine. I've lived with him for a long time. He was on Line as well, so I had a good friend my age. And I just feel like they really set a good impression of what skiing should be in my mind.
Especially at that time. I mean, even to now, I mean, they really have their finger on the pulse of what's going on. And that's a tribute to the two guys in marketing there.
Totally.
The product guys, Jed Geisler, they make great products, but to have your finger on the pulse and know what the market needs is really important to that segment of skiing. And Josh, and now I can't think of his...
Dan Brown?
No, well, Dan Brown back then, but there's a new guy he went to my high school, which is really strange. But
okay.
He's awesome as well, and they get it, which I can't say for every ski company out there.
Totally.
Especially your next sponsor, but we don't need to talk about them just yet. You're in Salt Lake City. I mean, you're in Park City, but 4x9's in Salt Lake City. They're all going to school there, I believe. And are you filming with them at that point?
Not at all. I was mostly just filming with Alex Schlopey, trying to work our way into film crews, but I spent a lot of time skiing with those guys. I mean, quite a few of the kids in 4x9, like John Kutcher, Ryan Weibold, they grew up in Park City, so I knew them pretty well. But they were kind of like the only other crew of free skiers in Park City besides the kids who grew up in Park City and the small group that I was in of like 8 kids. So all of a sudden, these kids come to Utah, go to school at University of Utah, start skiing in Park City with their huge baggy clothes, and they kind of have more of a gang aspect to them. And it was just really cool that I was able to see all these. A lot of them are from the East Coast, and just this fresh new wave of skiers ripping my home mountain apart. I felt like I was the big dog, and then now these kids are here. And who's Tom Wallish? All of a sudden, he just blows up, So I was following them around, skiing with them a bunch, but I wasn't able to make it into their films quite yet.
And one thing that's unique about you too, you're a tall skier. In terms of the people that you ski with, is there anybody that's your height?
It's pretty funny because a few of the kids I ski with are actually as tall as I am. I spend most of my time skiing with McCrae Williams, and he's maybe a little bit taller than me. But when we're traveling, when we're going from event to event, we're by far the tallest guys in the room. Chris Laker's my same height as well. So I feel like that really helped prove that we can still have good style. I mean, I looked up to John Spriggs a lot growing up because he was the tallest guy I knew on skis, and he still made it look really good.
You ever party with Spriggs?
A little bit.
Okay, just checking.
Yep.
A lot of people perceive that it's hard for a tall skier to have great style. With you, it didn't really seem to be a question. But at this point in your life, it's probably like 2012. You've done well in contests, and the Olympics are coming up. Do you even feel like there's a chance that you can get into the Olympics when you hear that it's going to be a sport?
Honestly, I thought it was a far stretch in that I probably wasn't going to make the first Olympic team. I remember the moment that I heard Slopestyle got into the Olympics, and of course I made that a goal because I thought the Olympics were so cool.
Were they cooler to you than the X Games?
No. I think X Games is always, in my mind, the event I've wanted to win, and that's always been the biggest goal in my career. But, of course, Olympics is worldwide, and watching what it did to our town and watching the fans come to the Salt Lake City Games really inspired me to want to represent my country in the Olympics. So, of course, that was a huge goal once I heard that our skiing slopestyle was in the Olympics, but I had no idea that it was even possible for me to make the team. I just thought it would be a fun goal and fun to try and make it, but I didn't believe in myself enough to have the confidence, at least in 2012.
The team only takes 4 people. Throughout the season, you do well. There's a few other people that do well also, and there's 4 spots. And the way that it happens is they're going to pick 3 people on the Olympic ceremony day where they're picking the team. And then there's 1 discretionary spot. I don't even know what discretionary spot means, and I'm going to ask you to kind of evaluate that. I get it if someone's been hurt and you grab them and pull them in, but that's not what happened in this discretionary situation. You end up snagging the discretionary spot. So what does that even mean?
Yeah, so through those 5 events, I wanted to ski the best I possibly could. I actually only did 4 of the 5 qualifying events, but they named the team after Park City after the last event, which I ended up winning. So at that point, I knew there was a possibility of me making the team. And from what I'm aware of, with the coach's discretion spot, it's saved for situations like Torin in 2013-14. He had his lung collapsed by a physical therapist who was dry needling his shoulder. So he was actually had to pull out of all the Olympic qualifiers. And that was, in my opinion, that was a good example of how they used the coach's discretion.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Torn won the test event the year before. He was by far one of the best pipe skiers in the world. He couldn't do the qualifying events, but he was going to be healthy. By the time the Olympics are around, they're going to give him a pass because they know he's a good chance of getting a medal. But for slopestyle, it was a little different. And from what I'm aware of, in other sports, it can get very political, and there are a lot of families who will sue the U.S. ski team over situations like this. So they have to be very careful how they go about choosing that 4th place spot. And for us, it wasn't just like it sucked because Wallish was injured, and I believe if Slopey and myself didn't win those last 2 events, they probably would have put him in. But the fact that there were 2 kids who did win events who weren't on the team yet put the U.S. team in a very interesting situation. So how I was explained, they actually didn't just choose me. They compared everyone's results over the past 2 or 3 years. They got down to the statistics of how many camps did they show up to, how much time do they spend in the gym, your World Cup podium average, your top 10 average, your top 5 average, and I believe I beat Slopey out by only a couple points to get that final spot. So I think a lot of people don't realize that it was more or less between Alex Slopey and myself, and that unfortunately, I think they wrote Tom off by the time that we both won an event.
It's got to be frustrating to you because if you go online to New Schoolers and you look through the forums back then, you didn't have a chance at making that discretionary team according to the public. It was Wallish's spot to lose. They were pissed when you were selected, and it was all justified afterwards. But how does that make you feel as like part of the ski community, part of this website for your whole life, and then people talking shit on you because they like someone better than you?
That was probably the hardest part of that whole situation. I mean, part 1 of it being a difficult situation was I had to pretty much hang out with some of my best friends as they got the phone call from Skogan saying they don't make the team, and then I get one saying I did make the team. So it's really hard because I wanted to be really excited. I was really excited and so happy for myself, but you also feel so bad for your friends whose Olympic chances are done at that point. So that was really hard in itself, just hanging out with McRae, hanging out with Slopey, hanging out with Wallish, and trying to make it not awkward and not be like overly excited around them. But yeah, part 2 of it being hard was, I mean, I probably got 50 messages on Facebook of kids telling me I should give up my spot. Mary O'Neill sent me a pretty rude message, which she apologized later, but I still was very offended by it. It's just hard when people tell you that, oh, I'm actually not going to congratulate you for accomplishing the feat of making the U.S. Olympic team, which is arguably one of the hardest teams to make, but I'm actually going to try and convince you to give it up and give it to Wallish. So I still feel so bad that Tom wasn't able to make the team, but at the same time, I mean, I wasn't going to just crush my dreams because at that point, if I didn't make the Olympic team, I don't think I was going to be able to hold on to my sponsors. I was probably going to have to go back to school to support myself, to support my mom and my family. And for me, that making that Olympic team was just like the catalyst to my ski career really taking off. So it was hard. I had a really hard time dealing with those messages. I just tried to ignore them all. I just remember it was at X Games when we found out, and I just had to beat Wallish and beat Slopey, which sucked to think about it that way. But I was like, if they beat me here, these hate messages I'm getting are going to be even worse.
What did you end up in that X Games?
I got 6th there. I beat Wallish and Slopey, which wasn't like my main goal, but I just needed to protect myself from getting more hate messages. Like I couldn't even go on New Schoolers. I'd get so bummed out.
It's got to affect your self-confidence as a person at some point because
Totally.
a lot of them are your friends or people you know of or people at least you've seen in this community for years.
Totally. I've never been really too popular on New Schoolers. And then I finally am starting to make a bit more of a name for myself, and it's in a negative way, which is not the greatest.
Tom is the crown jewel, I would say, of anything that goes on New Schoolers, and you killed him.
Yeah, and kids didn't take it lightly, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. I went back and looked at some of those pages, and it was kind of comical, but it all came around and worked out for the best.
It fueled me, for sure. I mean, it motivated me even more to just prove them wrong.
So you're on the team. You get on the plane, you go to Sochi, and we hear all the red flags here in the U.S. What's the experience for you as an athlete there?
I went to the test event the year before, and it was pretty, for half pipe actually, but it was pretty funny to see the difference and crazy to see the difference in when we went for the test event. It was like a rural, it was just a mountain town and a bunch of farmers hanging out in the valley there. And then I come back a year later, this whole town, all these towns going up to the ski resort are gone and there's massive hotels there. So for me, that was crazy, but I felt really safe in Russia. The slopestyle course was awesome. It was really icy when we first got there. I think there was a lot of people bitching about it being too dangerous, but it was just a really good course. So people get hurt all the time. And I remember when Torstein broke his collarbone, he caught an edge after the first rail and they were trying to like shut the event down, which was kind of crazy, but I felt safe. We had, I think, private security following us around everywhere we went. We couldn't see them, but every time we left the athlete village, someone would follow us from what I'm aware of. So that was good to know. I'm like, well, at least someone's watching over me. So I was just trying not to do anything too sketchy, you know?
You don't really do anything sketchy, do you?
Well, so really, there's a funny part of that whole story before we even got to Russia that not a lot of people know about. I'll tell you right now because I think it's great how everything turned out for me. We went to Munich for the Olympic processing. So we all left Salt Lake, super excited to go into the Olympics. We were going to spend like 18 hours in Germany just to get all our Olympic gear, get fitted for the opening, closing ceremonies, gear, our podium wear, our North Face competition wear. And we're all in this hotel. I'm just super excited I'm going to the Olympics. I'm like, I can't fucking believe it. Like, this is crazy. I'm going to the Olympics, and we're at the hotel lobby bar. Everyone's having a beer. And I just start drinking a little too much. I'm a little too excited. And there was these Polo Ralph Lauren girls who were kind of egging me on. They were really cute, and they kept buying me shots. To the point of, last thing I remember was taking shots with them and a few guys who were working for Polo in Munich. And I came to as the airplane was landing in Sochi. I'm in a middle seat on this chartered jet with no one to the left of me, some poor guy to the right of me, and I had nothing. I had no idea where my phone was, where my passport was. I was just dressed. I was so drunk still, I couldn't believe it. I get off the plane. I'm about to throw up, and I'm like, dude, I'm going home. I just got to try not to throw up on the tarmac here, but I'm probably going to be sent home. As people are coming out of the plane, someone passes me my cell phone, someone passes me my backpack, someone passes me my wallet. Things are starting to come together, and everyone's just staring at me. No one's saying anything. They're just staring at me, and I'm like, shit. And I'm the kid who is just in the pain cave struggle bus the whole time we're going through customs in Russia and getting registered for the Olympics. There's this huge tent where you had to take all your gear, take it through x-rays, get your credential. And I just remember I couldn't get my bags up the ramp to the tent. My cart kept falling over, and I was trying to hold in my throw up. And fortunate enough for me, no one ever said a single thing to me about it. Not Skogan, not Mike Jankowski, no one. I mean, a few of the athletes were making fun of me, like Bobby and Gus, but I got no backlash, which was insane. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I literally was like a drunk, hot mess for 12 hours, and people had to pretty much baby me and take care of me. And the only thing I even heard was our therapist was like, hey, how's your head feeling?
Oh, to be an elite athlete.
I just couldn't believe it, especially with all the tension with the safety of Russia. And at that point, I was on the bus heading up to the athlete village thinking, I just accomplished one of the biggest goals of my life in making an Olympic team. And I'm probably not even going to get to go skiing because I just blew it. Because I was too excited and drank too much. But I guess the only repercussions from that were the half-pipe kids who came a week later weren't allowed to drink at processing because of me. But that was it. So they were mad at me, but I pretty much got away with murder at that point.
I'm sure they're glad they let you ski because you made them look good.
I mean, it's still so funny to me. I'm like, I would have sent myself home because, not to say any names, but another athlete after their event was a little drunk in town right below our athlete village, and they sent her home right away.
Did she win a gold medal?
No.
Well,
but she was drunk and they had her on a flight that night home. So I was like, wow, I somehow got lucky.
In terms of the athlete village, I hear it's all condoms and McDonald's. What was it like for you?
I would like to experience the Summer Olympics. I mean, not as an athlete, but check out their athlete village, see how it's set up. Because there's 3 athlete villages in Russia. There was the main athlete village at the coast in Sochi, where all the stadiums were. There was the mountain cluster, they called it, which is where our athlete village was. And then there was an endurance village, which was kind of across the valley where all the cross-country skiers stayed. But from what I'm aware of, there wasn't too much sex going on in the buildings. I mean, I didn't see a single Olympic condom, which I thought was wild because everyone kept asking me about it. I saw a lot of cute girls, but no one really socialized at the time that I was there. I think everyone was super focused on their events, and a lot of the US guys, we didn't really leave our building too much. So from what I'm aware of, it's a hoax. It's not some big sex games. It's really just a bunch of people sitting in their hotel rooms.
I think you guys are just losers. I think everybody else was scoring left and right, and you guys weren't.
I'm sure that's what was going on. I think it was all happening down in the coastal village with all the figure skaters.
Moving forward in your Olympic experience, it comes time for practice or training or whatever you want to call it. And it sounds like you learn your triple in training, and the way you're skiing, almost everyone there, if they were to put money down based on who's skiing best at practice, it's you, hands down. Like, it wasn't a surprise that you won to anybody in Sochi, maybe to the rest of the world it was, but there, everybody knew that you had a solid game.
That was what was crazy. I learned the switch right double 9 that December, right before Dew Tour that year. So just that one day I learned that trick really kind of sparked everything for me and allowed me to have that advantage. And I knew I was going to have to try a triple once I knew I made the Olympic team. So I really wanted to try it at X Games. I didn't feel confident at X Games. I really didn't want to hurt myself, but that triple was on my mind, and it had been on my mind for a couple of weeks. It all kind of came together for me. It was our last day of practice. It was super soft, super slushy, pretty flat, light, and windy, so everyone went in. And Gus, Bobby, and I were the only guys who were still skiing. I dropped in after Gus. No one knew I was going to try it. Like, I think Skogan had no idea that I was even warming it up. But did a few switched up 9s. I wanted to do it, but I was like, I don't know, maybe, who knows? Like, it probably won't work out. And then I saw Gus ate shit pretty hard. Not pretty hard, but he ate it on the second jump, so he was kind of crawling up the knuckle of the third jump. I'm skiing in. I'm like, if I'm going to do it, this is now right in front of Gus. I just got to do it. So I decided to switch up 9 a little harder than the run before, and I ended up doing a switch triple 12. And at that point, everything just changed. I was just like, oh my God, that's the trick I need. I felt like I was skiing pretty well. My rail tricks were feeling good. The rest of my run felt good. I just knew I needed a triple because, of course, Gus and Gepper were going to throw him down, and Bobby. So at that point, I wanted to do a few more, but I didn't really want anyone else to know I was doing it. And then people started kind of spreading word that I did that trick, and then I got nervous because at that point I knew I had to do it in the contest. But it all just got crazy because once I learned that switch triple 12, hitting the podium at the Olympics became a reality. And at that point, it was trying to control my nerves and not blow it, make it to finals so I can throw that trick and hopefully be the first to do that kind of combination of a slopestyle run where you do 2 double corks to the left and a triple cork to the right. After that, that became a pretty well-used formula for people to win events, and I was just so happy that I was able to do it in that moment.
Yeah, pretty big moment to do it in. You end up making the finals, and then in finals, you qualify in first, which has to be mind-blowing to you because when you qualify in first in these on your first run, you're the last one to go at the end of the day. So you get to see everybody else go, and then you know the score to beat. And when it comes to your second run, the score to beat is yours, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, after I landed my first run, I didn't think I was going to land the triple. I actually kind of messed up, and not a lot of people really know that, but I missed my takeoff in the first run of finals. So the triple it's not my favorite. I did a better one on my victory lap, which I wish was the one I did in my first run, but it still got me the score I needed. So I was just so happy to land that. Like, I remember taking off that last jump, skiing into it thinking, just land the triple, bro. You just did it in practice. You got this. missed my pop, and I just grabbed and just pulled my head back, which is not what you want to do, and was just looking for the landing and was so stoked I landed that. But I saw my score come in, and usually if you get a 95 or above, you're most likely going to win an event. It is possible that there are 2 or maybe 3 scores above 95, but I got a 95.8, and that's a huge score. I mean, that was the highest score of the day. I had the highest score from qualifiers already. I pretty much freaked out on the snowmobile ride back up because no one was around. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get it. I knew I was going to get a medal because I thought it was going to be pretty hard for 3 people to beat that score.
For sure.
And I was really stoked. I'm like, I'm content. Like, even if I get third, I'm content. But I had to sit there and watch 11 of the best skiers in the world take their second run and try and have at my score. And slowly, as more people weren't beating my score, I realized I wanted to win the gold. I wasn't going to be happy with a silver or a bronze because it's getting closer to winning gold. And in the back of my mind, I was thinking of taking my switch triple 12 to 14. I was ready to try and do a better run the whole time. And it was really crazy watching Gepper and Gus throw their runs down and not knock my score off. Those were probably the hardest moments. And one of the coolest moments, but that was also kind of hard for me, was Andreas qualified second. So he was the last guy to drop who could take me down. And before he drops in, he kind of says, congratulations, you're the first gold medalist.
Huh.
And I'm like, no, dude, you never know, man. Like, you got this. I didn't really want him to feel like he couldn't win, but he kind of took some pressure off my shoulders when he said that. I really wanted him to do well and end up on a podium, but that was kind of when I realized that I probably won, but still, I wasn't going to let my guard down. And the hardest part is I had no idea his score, because you have to stand at the drop-in and get ready to go, because once his score is in, you're dropping. So I'm sitting there, my music's playing super loud, and I'm just waiting for Skogan to give me a nod, like, you won, because he had his little earpiece in. People were talking to him from the bottom, and he didn't even say anything. He just gave me knucks and nodded, and at that point, I just couldn't believe it, which was crazy. The funny thing was it probably doesn't seem too often that people have victory laps, especially in the Olympics, but Dara Howell had kind of the same situation 2 days prior, which is pretty wild for me to think about, that the first 2 slopestyle events, the winners had victory laps, which is crazy. That doesn't happen.
You're standing up there, Skogan gives you knuckles, you realize you've won an Olympic gold, you have to get through your run. What are the emotions? Is it like tears? Or, because I mean, it's something that's like way bigger than anything you could possibly imagine.
I had my music playing pretty loud, but I could hear people screaming from the bottom. And I don't know if that was because they were stoked on Andreas' score, or if it was the Americans and my teammates screaming because they were stoked I just won. When you have a victory lap, I feel like there's almost more eyes on you, you know? Because on TV, they're like, this kid won. Here is his second run, his final run. So you kind of have to do something badass.
You're either the dude who does something badass, or you clown the event and ride down the course and not
Totally.
hit anything.
I mean, I didn't want to go down and like do straight airs or 360s or backflips. I mean, I wanted to respect all the other competitors who had to take 2 runs, and all the Americans who didn't make it to the Olympics who worked their ass off at those 5 qualifying events. And I also wanted to respect myself and not just wimp out that last run. So I thought my second run was better than my first run. I don't know if they judged me different because it didn't really matter, but it didn't get as good of a score. But that was probably the best run, like the most confident, relaxed slopestyle run I've ever had in my life, where I put a triple in.
How long from the time you're on the bottom, you realize you won, you're shitting your pants, everybody's rushed around you, freaking out, how long between then and you getting on the podium?
That was probably about like 2 p.m, and we didn't go to awards until 8:30 or 9. But it was a long, like 6 or 7 hours. I mean, we had to do drug testing. We had to go back and change. We had to get from Mountain Village to the Coastal Village. We had to get our ceremony uniforms. And I mean, it was just a whirlwind. Like from that moment on, my life became so hectic. It was just a big blur, a happy blur. But things went from quiet Joss. I had like 2,000 followers on Instagram. And I believe that night, I had 54,000 followers on Instagram.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I know. I was just like, before finals, I hit 10K. I couldn't believe it.
That is insane.
So, I mean, if you look at my following, it's just all from the Olympics.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it's crazy.
One of the biggest events in the world, and you were the top
Totally.
of that. You get on the podium, you, Gus, and Nick, the first American podium in this new sport, and I would think there's tears somewhere, but who knows?
For me, it was crazy. I mean, before making the Olympic team, I was in a pretty shitty place. My dad passed away in August when I was in New Zealand.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was hard. It was it was just really difficult because it was about a 4-month incident where from my dad having heart surgery to being in ICU for 3.5 months, pretty much knocked out where I couldn't talk to him, but I went to the hospital every day to visit him.
Yeah.
I ended up it was one of the stupidest decisions I think I've made in my life, but it seemed like maybe the thing to do. I headed down to New Zealand to ski, to get away from kind of all the depressing things in my life in Park City. The doctors, my mom, they all told me I should probably go because my dad will still be there when we get back. I didn't have much hope that we were going to make through it. I mean, I was really, really every night just crossing my fingers and just hoping that my dad would make it through it. But the situation wasn't too well. I decided to go to New Zealand and ended up turning around right away because when I was flying down, my dad ended up passing away. But I almost feel like my dad was waiting for me to leave because he didn't want to stop me from skiing. I ended up not doing that World Cup, which I thought I needed to do to even qualify for the Olympics. So that was a really terrible situation. And then my girlfriend of like 3 years at the time found out was cheating on me with other skiers who I won't name, who I thought were my friends. So life was pretty bad. Like just everything seemed crazy. Like my girlfriend was the one person I thought I could really relate to because my brother was dealing my father's death everyone deals with it in different ways, but he was just kind of living in Salt Lake, didn't really talk to us too much, didn't come up to Park City to hang out with my mom and I. My mom was dealing with it in her own way. I mean, our family was super separated. My dad's extended family hated us because they thought we were trying to hold on for too long and putting him through too much torture. I kind of felt really alone. I spent Thanksgiving that year alone in Breckenridge because I didn't really have any reason to come home. So that all was super hard. I ended up smashing my kneecap at the third Olympic qualifier, and I thought that was the end of my Olympic journey. So the fact that I made it through all that and ended up on top of the podium, my mom was able to make it to the Olympics very last second because of a lot of local families in Park City donated to get her over there, which is great. So it was just wild. I mean, the emotions for me were, I wasn't even thinking about like the American sweep or anything. I was just couldn't believe how quickly life changed. I went from probably one of the lowest points in my life, was losing ski sponsors, didn't think I had a ski career, lost my girlfriend, lost my dad, didn't know what I was doing, wasn't skiing too well, to ending up on the top of the podium, the biggest stage in the world. It was pretty crazy, and I think it just saved my whole family. It was a reason for my whole family kind of to come together and celebrate something, you know, and in such a dark time, there's nothing to really hope for. And I think my whole Olympic journey was a good way for our family to kind of get away from the bad in life and get behind something and really, really hope that I make it to the Olympics, hope that I do well. And the fact that I ended up winning, I think, brought us all a lot closer and financially helped out a lot. And that's a whole different part of the story.
That's a heavy story, and I'm sure on that podium, like you say, you're not thinking about an American sweep. It's probably just thinking about your dad and his family and how, holy shit, how this roller coaster is now back on track and life is not what it once was, but it's pretty good right now.
Totally. I mean, that was like, because my best friend growing up, Sage Kotzenberg, won snowboarding the week before, and I just watched how crazy things got for him. Like, he was an internet sensation within hours. I mean, that was the first event at the Olympics. So of course, there's going to be a lot of media around it. But at that point, I remember Ben Verge, one of the halfpipe coaches, when Sage won, Ben just said, yo, Sage probably just made $1 million.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, no way. There's no way he just made $1 million. Like, yeah, right. And then he started talking to me. I'm like, no way. My friend just made him, like, pretty much just made his life because of this event. And of course, that's not the reason we're doing it, but that's an added bonus. So when I won, I was like, oh God, I can get a car now. I can help my mom out. Like, that came way later, but I just couldn't believe that thought. Like, I remember we were all talking about that. Like, if you win an Olympic medal, like, you're going to be stoked. Not just the fact that you won an Olympic medal, but it's going to help you for the rest of your life. It was kind of like a job security if you get an Olympic medal, a little bit.
Well, I look at it as like, I really don't ever want to go to an event where they have an Olympic silver medalist speaking. Give me gold or give me nothing. So
totally.
I would say, yes, if you win the gold medal, you should be set for life. You should be able to get speaking engagements that can be able to pay you enough each year to get by based on this achievement that not too many people in the world have ever done.
Totally.
You leave the Olympics, though, and go on a weird trip, it sounds like. Do you go straight from Sochi to Bosnia?
No, actually, I went straight from Sochi to New York for about 2 weeks, and then I went home for about a week, and then I went to Bosnia.
So you do a whole media tour first. I'm sure you do Letterman and all the different late night shows.
Yep, that was when Nick, Gus, and myself became a boy band, I guess you would say, which I wasn't too stoked on, but it was a great opportunity for all of us, and we got a shit ton of publicity through it.
What's the dumbest thing that you were ever asked to do for money?
Oh, man. People ask me to take my shirt off all the time, and I will not do that. But I'd say that's kind of, I don't know, that's hard. I did a lot of stupid things, man, to be honest, for money, but I'm not going to say no.
What's the most embarrassing that you did?
What is the most embarrassing thing? Oh, man. I did this video with Gepper for VH1 where they had us fake skiing in front of a green screen, but we were wearing street clothes and had massive long poles. And we had to act like we were saving this chick who was very not attractive from an avalanche. And it was really funny. That was one where they actually got me to pull my shirt up a little bit and show my abs. And then there's a really embarrassing picture of Nick and I staring at each other's abs on the internet. I think if you search my name. That was one of the more embarrassing things I did. I'd say, in my mind, the more embarrassing stuff would have to be, I don't know, it's an NBC show I did. It's an action sports or adventure sports, where they came to Park City and they did a profile on me, and they used some of the worst skiing footage that I've ever pretty much seen of myself in this nationwide television show, to the point where I watched half the episode and never finished it because I was so embarrassed with the skiing that was put to my name and put to my image. That was the hardest part. I mean, I had to be really careful whenever I was skiing or in front of a camera that if I do something that's ugly or do something stupid, it's going to be seen. They're going to use it. So that was what pissed me off the most. Like, you want to put a lot of work into the content that goes out, and you want to spend a lot of time making sure you're presenting yourself the way you want. But for me, it was so hard. There's so much going on every single day, so much media, so many cameras that you just kind of got tricked into it. And half the time, like how Nick did his dating contest and Gus did the puppy thing, like, I don't know. I mean, that wasn't skiing. That was what was hard for me, is I wasn't able to talk about how cool our sport was, because every time we went to do an interview, they asked Nick about his dating contest. They asked Gus how his puppies are doing. And then they kind of just talked to me a little bit, or asked me how it was losing my father before a ski contest. But I wanted to talk about skiing and promote our sport. So that was a really hard part as well. And it was just kind of weird how it became like this fight for attention between the three of us. And I didn't really like that at all.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day...
Who could talk more? And yeah, sorry, I didn't over-talk to you, but that's exactly what happened. Like, I'd start talking and someone would talk over me, and I just got so over it that I just stopped doing the media appearances.
It can be about who talks more, but really it's about who wins the gold medal. And it's unfortunate the media sees other stories as more important than the gold medal when we're talking about the Olympics, but whatever, you know? I mean, it was great for everybody. It was cool to see the spotlight on you, not always for the right reasons, but whatever, you know, you guys won an Olympic medal. And, you know, I always say you have to sell before you sell out. So you do all these things. Some are embarrassing, some aren't, but you've got to get paid. And then you get away from everything and you go on a trip to Bosnia, which is probably super interesting, but really I don't care about Bosnia at all. I care about the dog that bit you and gave you rabies. What happens there?
Well, I wouldn't say I actually had rabies.
It sounds better if you were like foaming at the mouth.
Yeah, there was a possibility that I got bit by a rabid dog. So we went to Sarajevo in Bosnia. It was a really cool experience. Mike McLeod, Andrew Napier, AJ DeCoulis, the 4x9 guys were approached by TGR to make a street skiing segment for them. And they came up with the idea to go to Bosnia and try and jib on all the old Olympic features that have been pretty much destroyed by the war they had in the early 90s. So it was a great experience going over there. There was no snow, but it was a really cool experience going to that country, really seeing what happens to these Olympic venues once the Olympics are over. I mean, all the venues there were shot to pieces during their war. So besides how that being a really cool experience, it was really hard because there was no snow. So we were trucking in snow left and right, trying to make features happen. We finished this kind of step down jump feature that we were hitting at one of the ski resorts, and we're taking some pretty cool sunset photos at the top of Sarajevo, like right in town there. And I have my GoPro out. There's stray dogs everywhere. I mean, everywhere you go in Bosnia, there's stray dogs. So it's not weird to have a bunch of dogs walking around you. So I didn't think much of it. These big wolf-like looking dogs ran by me. They ran right by me, like I was in the middle of their whole crew. They go around a corner, and I'm like, wow, that was kind of wild. Those dogs got really close, and they looked pretty fierce and scary. I'm just going to keep walking. So I was alone. I'm walking down to the car, and all of a sudden I hear barking. They all come charging. I'm the only one in the street. No one's around.
Holy shit.
And I have somewhat of a GoPro shot of it, but you can't really tell it happened. You just hear me go, oh, shit. Because one of the dogs runs by, stops for a second, turns its head sideways, bites into my calf muscle. I fully see its fang tooth pierce a massive hole right into my muscle. Pull out. I saw its saliva, stringing off its tooth as it's pulling out of my skin. I look down and see this gaping hole in my leg. And the first thought was, I'm going to lose my leg because of some crazy disease right now. And I got to get to a hospital, which who knows what these are like in Bosnia. And that then became a very serious situation very quick. We went to a local clinic. No one really speaks English there. Our guide wasn't around. We called him Mahalo John, but he wasn't there, so he wasn't able to help us out. And they clean up the wound, but they pretty much tell me I need to get tetanus shots, I need to get rabies vaccines, all this crap, and they couldn't do it there. So they throw me in the back of an ambulance. Lucky enough for me, Carl Fosfet jumps in with me, so I'm not going alone. And before the rest of our crew could get in the van and follow us to the hospital, the ambulance just took off through town. We had no cell phones on us. We had no way to tell the guys where we went. Show up to this sketchy hospital, and there's graffiti all over the outside of the hospital, all over the inside of the hospital. There's no curtains between the gurneys and the emergency room.
It's comforting.
I'm trying to tell these people what just happened to me, and that I need to get a tetanus shot, and that maybe I could get started on a rabies vaccine. And while this is happening, these guys have no idea what I'm talking about. They keep kicking me out, taking me back in, not helping me. I pretty much am watching some dude die in the middle of the room there. His whole family's surrounded around him, and this guy was very old, and it's just crazy the fact that I was watching someone die and all these other people just sitting on their computers fucking around.
Huh.
I couldn't get help. Someone wrote on the paper that I was allergic to penicillin, so no one would even treat me, even though I'm not allergic to penicillin. We ended up going home that night because somehow our guide found us because he checked 3 different hospitals before he showed up at our hospital. Carl and I were just sitting on the curb, hopeless, just waiting. We had no idea where we were in this massive city. And lucky enough, I ended up getting some sketchy tetanus shot. I gave these guys cash, like $5 cash, and they gave me a tetanus shot, and they started me on a rabies vaccine. And from that point on, I pretty much, everywhere I went for the next 3 months, I was going to a hospital to get a rabies vaccine. I got, I'd say like 50 plus shots into my leg because of that dog bite.
Jesus.
It cost me a lot of money too. So that sucked.
Yeah, just a crazy story. So things keep getting crazy for you, I feel like. So you get back to the States after your rabies experience, we'll call it.
Yeah.
And when things should be going as well as they possibly could for you, you lose your ski sponsor.
Yeah, so things were pretty interesting sponsor-wise for me at that time. Before the Olympic season, I actually got dropped off Oakley Outerwear. It was part of that huge wave they made where they had to pretty much cut everybody.
Yeah.
And I didn't blame them. Like, at that point, I really wasn't skiing well. And if they can only keep like 2 or 3 athletes, I definitely wasn't going to be one of them. But I was still sponsored by them for eyewear. So after the Olympics, I thought for sure I'll get back on Oakley. But Strokes tried his hardest, and they just couldn't find budget to get me on. So that was a hard part. The fact that I just won the Olympics and I still couldn't get an outerwear sponsor. I stuck it out and ended up getting back with Oakley once Strokes was able to make it happen and once they were able to get the budget. So no hard feelings there. But I think what you were getting at was the whole Fisher thing.
Yeah.
And that was crazy because I remember they actually signed me for 1 more year after the Olympics. But we were at a photo shoot that spring in Clausburg, which is Marcus Etter's home mountain. And I'm with the whole Fisher crew, which is like 5 kids. You know, there wasn't many of us in the park scene. And Matt Berkowitz, who is my team manager, loved park skiing. He really wanted to make Fisher cool, but he just had no pull. He had no control, really. He was just kind of like the American manager. And his boss approaches me when we're skiing in Austria at this photo shoot and pretty much starts a conversation as, 3 years ago, when we decided to work with you, we had the goal in mind of getting an Olympic medal in slopestyle skiing. He was like, congratulations, we're so proud of you for winning that gold. And he goes, unfortunately, you winning a gold medal doesn't sell us any skis. So we're going to have to talk and see what happens, but it's not looking like we're going to be able to keep you on the team. And at that point, I'm thinking to myself, what the fuck just happened? I was hoping to get a pro model with Fisher. I mean, the whole reason I was working with Fisher is they didn't have a big free ski team, and I saw an opportunity to really grow with a brand and a big brand like Fisher. And at that point, I just got smacked in the face, it seemed like.
Race roots, I guess, really run strong there, and they don't understand the rest of the sport of skiing.
Totally. So they signed me for one more year. It wasn't anything to call home for, but I loved their skis. I really loved their product and wanted to make something happen. But I ended up getting second at X Games the next year, winning a Grand Prix, having one of the best seasons of my life besides the Olympic year. Filmed video parts. I felt like everything was going my way. And then Fisher that was it. They were like, well, we can't really offer you anything. We can give you skis still. And at that point, I was so bummed out. I mean, it just seemed like the higher ups in Austria just hated park skiing so much that the last 4 years I had dedicated to this company just got thrown out the window. Because, I mean, I honestly think the Fisher Nightstick was one of the best park skis I've been on my entire life. And I think it was very unfortunate that they didn't market it the right way, because I think a lot of kids would have liked to ski on that ski.
Until they have some American-directed marketing, and there's nothing wrong with the European marketing, but it's so race-skewed and so go fast and carve-skewed. The new school of skiing seems to come out of North America, and to be able to market products the right way, it has to be people from here.
And they even told me that I was the first alpine skier on Fisher product to win a gold medal since 1960.
Whoa. You couldn't do any more to cement your contract there.
Then they followed that. That was the same conversation where they told me that I wasn't selling skis. And I'm like, well, all right. I guess you can't really point fingers at what is selling skis and what is not, but I think you can't argue against winning the Olympics.
Yeah, 14, 15, you crush it. You get dropped afterwards, but you crush it. At the end of that year, do you break your hand?
It was mid-season. I just won the Grand Prix in Park City. Wallish asked me if I wanted to go shoot street rails in Boston for good company. And at that point, I'm like, hell yeah. I'm killing it in the contest scene. My sponsors are probably very stoked with me. I don't have much more to accomplish this year. I might as well do my dream and go try and film street rails and be in a big ski production. So I'm out there, and of course you're with Wallish, who's the street ski god. I mean, he never falls. Of course you're a little intimidated. Like, we're hitting some pretty big features and you want to ski well, especially to be in a movie with these guys. And stupid Josh tries to do a switch 270 onto one of the first rails we hit. It was a down flat down rail, and I barely got on the rail, slipped out, landed right in my hand, and ended up breaking my index finger metacarpal. And that was the start of about 6 hand injuries in a row, hand wrist injuries.
Then the next season, 2016, you go to Winter X and you end up bruising your knee or tweaking your knee and some cartilage damage and have to have that fixed.
Yeah, and I actually broke my hand in practice at that same X Games and had surgery the day after on my hand.
Oh, man. You've got a string of injuries. You get the knee operated in the summer of 2016. That comes back strong. You sign with K2, which is finally a brand that, you know, in the grand scheme of things, since you're online, you hadn't been on a cool brand. And K2 has, you know, a ton of history in the freestyle aspect of the sport. You come back to the X Games after, you know, your knee's fixed, and you get 6th at the 2017 X Games, and then you end up blowing your knee, and that kind of brings us to where we are now.
Totally.
We talked about in the beginning your knee injury and where you are now, and the Olympics are coming up in South Korea, a place I'm sure you've always wanted to go. But what are the chances of you making this Olympic team, having only skied for 2 weeks now?
Yeah, I mean, I want to say that I'm in a similar situation that I was to coming to the last Olympics. I think there would be a lot more pressure and a lot more eyes on me right now if I didn't get hurt. So this knee injury kind of took a little bit of stress away, but also added more to this whole process of qualifying for the Olympics. And I don't know, I'd say I want to believe I have a really good chance of making it, but I still don't know how my knee's going to handle hitting jumps, hitting rails. But right now, I mean, winning X Games and making the Olympic team is my main goal. Unfortunately, I have to miss out on the first Olympic qualifier, which is Dew Tour. I decided to not rush it and not try and be doing a competition 2 weeks from now. I'm going to wait till January, and we have 4 events between 2 weekends in a row that will decide my fate if I make the Olympic team or not. And I mean, I didn't have a terrible season last year, but it was one of the first years I didn't hit a podium, and that was pretty hard for me. So with coming off not the best season for me, I'm not even invited to X Games yet. So I don't know. Hopefully I can get into X Games, but I know the coach's discretion spot due to injury is not in my favor right now. So I got to do it the right way. And that's my goal, is to qualify the right way this time and really earn my spot. Because I feel like that is a little bit of a missing piece of the puzzle from the last Olympics, that I didn't qualify the complete right way. I still made the team fairly, but
You won the medal.
I know. I still felt like there was a little bit of drama around that fourth place spot, and I would love to make it back to the Olympics with a spot that I fully earned. I want to win 2 events and make it so there's no reason for them not to send me. And that's kind of my goal this time.
Well, I hope you achieve that goal. I mean, your road to recovery was a challenging one. And this time, if you make the team and if you go there, the story's going to be coming off a catastrophic knee injury, getting himself back in time to ski, and the will of this athlete who can take the bumps and bruises and nothing's going to stop him to getting to his Olympic goals is going to be the big media story, I would think. It's not going to be puppies this time.
Hey, I mean, if there's no drama, there's no story. So I'm just making my story that much better, I hope.
Well, I thank you for your time, and your story's been awesome. Congrats, and we'll look forward to January and seeing some big things.
Totally. Thanks for chatting, Mike. It was awesome.
So that was time with Joss Christensen, a refreshing perspective from a guy who barely made the U.S. team and then went on to win the Olympic gold medal. On the flip side of this coin is Joss's best friend from childhood, Alex Schlopey. Alex was in a battle with Joss and Tom Wallish for that final Olympic spot, and he was passed over like a Jewish holiday. His life spiraled into a mess of heroin, crack, and booze. And next week I connect with Alex, and he fills in all the details of what happened and what didn't happen for him. That's next week. Until then, I need to ask you to please share my posts, tell people about the podcast, and support my sponsors: Evo.com, Rescue Water, 10 Barrel Brewery, The Summit at Snoqualmie, and Unofficial Networks. Thanks for listening, everyone, and have a great week.